Okay, I'm your anime manga mom. My son discovered the Netflix version of Death Note live action, and we watched it. I wouldn't have put it on if he hadn't chose it because I'd heard bad things. I'd heard that it didn't live up to the live action. That there's a curse for turning something from anime to live action, that it just goes horribly, horribly wrong in all the cases. Now, we had just watched the live action for One Piece, and so we knew that that curse does not always hold up. So they did a great job with One Piece, but Death Note was not like the anime. I have not read the manga, so I can't really compare it to the manga, but I was a pretty good fan of the anime. I It's been a long time since I watched it. It's one of the first anime that I ever watched. So it's been a while, but I do remember thinking it was pretty good. It did a lot of things that I didn't expect, and I'm usually pretty good at reading foreshadowing and knowing what's going to happen. So I don't really, and of course I know a lot of the tropes and everything. So I have a pretty good idea of who's going to win in the end, what's going to happen. But with Death Note, it subverted a lot of my expectations. So the live action was like a different story. As somebody who read the manga or watched the anime and said, you know what, that was an interesting story. I would write it like this. And so they wrote it completely different, with different characters, with different outcomes, and a different plot, a different end, a different story. So I did not like the CGI of Ryuk. Ryuk is my favorite character in the original anime. He's just really unique. He has a unique look. He's uh, very, very creepy. So he's just really interesting. I also liked L a lot, just because of his oddities and because he's smart and because I think he was doing ultimately the right thing, I guess. Uh, but in the anime, I just want to say there are going to be spoilers in this video. If you have not seen the anime of Death Note, then I would suggest watching that or reading the manga before getting too into this, because there are spoilers in there. So if you haven't seen it, watch it, come back and watch this, or if you just don't care, keep going. All right. Kira was obviously a villain. I don't think anybody can watch it and think he was really sympathetic and really a good guy. I mean, they could have made him an anti-hero, but they didn't. He's a mass murderer, he's a villain, he's uh not only does he kill killers and people who are out to hurt other people, but he also kills the innocent. And he's completely self-centered. He's egotistical. He's very intelligent, very good looking, very charming. He's everything that you want your kid to be. But then he's he knows it. He's very arrogant, and I find that very unattractive in a person, as a quality in a person. I really, really like intelligent characters, but not if they hold it over you and rub your nose in it and deem you a worse person or just extra, you know? Uh, Now, I don't mind people being confident in their own skills. That's a great thing. But no, Kira just, yeah, he's a villain, and there's no way around that. I understand that they made his ideals sympathetic. Like, you do want the world to be a better place. Sometimes you want to enact change, whether other people are on board with it or not, and you really believe that that'll make things better, society better. But sometimes you don't know the consequences of your actions. Sometimes you don't know if there's a false positive and you're going after an innocent person, or you know, there are just so many variables that you can't think of. Even if you're a very intelligent person, it's still not up to you, you know? And Kira takes it upon himself to make the world a better place through murder. And it's a really interesting show. It makes you think a lot. Of course, everybody thinks, if I found the Death Note, would I write a name in it? Um, that's I think that was the poll before it came out. They asked in Shonen Jump if people would use the Death Note. But how far would you go? How far is okay? In all religions, they think murder is wrong. Some of them allow instances like it's okay to kill somebody if they're attacking you, attacking your family, if they've committed certain crimes. I mean, treason is punishable by death. Do you believe in the death penalty? That's always a big issue. Uh, is capital punishment ever an option? Um, but yeah, believe me, if you came after my kids, I would be Mama Bear and I would take you down. And you would have done it to yourself by coming after my kids or me. And Death Note kind of puts these questions in your mind. Even if it was intended, I don't know. But people think, well, what instances is killing okay? Would it make society better, or would it just do it in the short run? I do think that having consequences for actions is something that we have to have. If you didn't feel pain when you touched a hot stove, would you know you were injuring yourself, you know? So if society doesn't have consequences for actions, then do you know you're hurting society? Do you know that you're breaking things down, that you're not living up to your potential, your expectations? There's always that element of chance in the real world. And that's what Kira was trying to he was trying to get that element of chance and do it away with it. He wanted to have consequences for the actions done in a timely manner so that people can clearly see, if you murder, you will be murdered. So that that would cut down on, I guess, a lot of people who did the premeditated. So um in the live action though, it was not the same light. It wasn't like Yagami. He was Americanized. He was not the smartest, most best looking, most charismatic person. He was just another guy who got pushed around. So it turned into a very American trope. Uh, he was much more sympathetic. He didn't kill people who their only crime was getting close to the truth, which in the anime and I'm sure in the manga he did. He just, he went from anti-hero to complete straight up villain when he kills the innocent people who didn't, by his own ideals, deserve it. So I do think that the Death Note in the anime drove him crazy because he was logically thinking until he started to get too much power and it went to his head and he just went off. But when he lost his memory, he went back to logically thinking and trying to do the right thing. I guess it's just the power. You get drunk on power, you know? I mean, right right now we see it everywhere. We see there's corruption anywhere where somebody gets way too much power. It goes to their heads and they start using it to their advantage. Now, what did Kira do to his advantage? I mean, he wasn't making money off the ordeal, but he was just enacting his will on the world. He was bending it to his whims. He was judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one. Um, I don't know. I like the anime. It was okay. It wasn't my favorite. It's never really been my favorite. I do like the darker themes, the questions, the fact that I didn't predict everything, that it wasn't, it was new and unique. And I think that for that reason, I think it holds a higher regard for most people, because it's not like every other shonen out there. It's twisted and dark and at times just completely meaningless, like futile. Uh, but then when you put a person in such a high position as to own a Death Note, they're not nobody's going to be smart enough to do that, to be fair and just and right. Nobody has enough intelligence to completely outdo false positives. Putting an innocent person on death row happens. I want to say all the time, not all the time, but it happens enough that it's a thing. So for that reason alone, I think that nobody should have that absolute power, because we only have one life. We only have this time, and we have to deal with it to the best of our ability and make it last as long as possible, and to achieve the things that we want to achieve, because this is our time. It's now. So anyway, yeah, the Death Note movie, it wasn't the same. Uh, Light doesn't kill innocent people. That's his girlfriend, who is not Misa, but Misa-esque, and I guess all of Light's darker qualities. L, it's just a different movie. Um, Somebody who watched Death Note and thought, this is interesting, I'm gonna write my own. It's not horrible in the fact of if you watched it just and you had no clue what you were watching, but it's not really noteworthy. It's the same tropes that we always get of the bullied kid who finds power and uses it, uh, being tempted by the darkness to go further than you should, um, and then coming out where the bad guys are punished and the good guys get to fight another day. And while that's comforting and familiar, it's not what Death Note was. Death Note is subversive and thought provoking and dark, and there are no true protagonists. Everybody has their twisted, bent quality to them. So, I highly recommend the anime. I liked it. It's not on my top 10, but it was very good. The movie, if you're bored, watch it. I don't know, it's not the worst movie ever. The CGI is not great, but it's not Death Note. So if that's what you're looking for, this isn't for you. So just take that with a grain of salt. Make your own decisions. Let me know what you've been watching. If you have any recommendations, I'd be happy to listen to it. I'm always looking for awesome recommendations. Yeah, I'm still working on Vinland Saga. I'm in the second season, and I've watched about 9 of those. It's a completely different show, it seems to me, than season 1 of Vinland Saga, which seemed much more historical, and this one is definitely more of a story. But anyways, I'll talk to you guys about that next week if I finish it, and I can give you a good review. But anyways, it was good talking to you, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye bye.